Hi, Grandma here, and I'm reading from Tom Sawyer, and I'm finishing up chapter 6, The Midnight Charm. The first part of the chapter was about Tom trying to stay home from school, but his aunt saw through it and she sent him to school. But on his way to school, he ran into Huckleberry Finn, and Huckleberry Finn is, he's a pretty significant character in Mark Twain literature. He is considered a pariah among the parents. The kids think he is the best. He's basically a homeless child whose father is a drunk, and he doesn't go to school. He has no adult really that tells him what to do. Sometimes he doesn't even have a place to sleep, but the kids all think that's all really cool. So Tom is with Huckleberry Finn, and they're talking about ways to get rid of a wart. And meanwhile, Huckleberry Finn has a dead cat, and he said you can get rid of warts with the dead cat. So in my book, I'm starting on page 65, and Tom asks him, how do you cure them with dead cats? Why, you take your cat and go and get in the graveyard long about midnight when somebody that was wicked has been buried. And when it's midnight, a devil will come, or maybe 2 or 3, but you can't see them. You can only hear something like the wind, or maybe hear them talk. And when they're taking that feller away, you leave your cat after them and say, devil, follow the corpse. Cat, follow the devil. Warts, follow the cat. I'm done with you. That'll fetch any wart. Sounds right. Did you ever try it, Huck? No, but old Mother Hopkins told me. Well, I reckon it's so then, because they say she's a witch. Say, why, Tom, I know she is. She witched Pap. Pap says so himself. He come along one day and he see she was a witching him, so he took up a rock, and if she hadn't dodged, he'd have got her. Well, that very night, he rolled off in a shed wherein he was laying drunk and broke his arm. Why, that's awful. How did he know she was a witching him? Lord, Pap can tell easy. Pap says when they keep looking at you, right steady, they're a witching you, especially if they mumble, because when they mumble, they're saying the Lord's Prayer backwards. Say, Hucky, when you going to try the cat? Oh, tonight. I reckon they'll come after old Hoss Williams tonight. But they buried him Saturday. Didn't they get him Saturday night? Why, how you talk. How could their charms work till midnight and then it's Sunday? Devils don't slosh around much on a Sunday, I don't reckon. I never thought of that. That's so. Let me go with you. Of course, if you ain't afraid. Afraid? I ain't likely. Will you meow? Yeah, and you meow back if you get a chance. Last time you kept me a meowing around till old Hayes went to throwing rocks at me and says, darn that cat. And so I have a brick through his window, but don't you tell. I won't. I couldn't meow that night because Auntie was watching me, but I'll meow this time. Say, what's that? Nothing but a tick. Where'd you get him? Out in the woods. What do you take for him? I don't know. I don't want to sell him. All right. It's a mighty small tick anyway. Oh, anybody can run a tick down that don't belong to them. I'm satisfied with it. It's a good enough tick for me. Sure, there's plenty of ticks. I could have had 1,000 of them if I wanted to. Well, why don't you? Because you know mighty well you can't. This is a pretty early tick, I reckon. It's the first one I've seen this year. Say, Huck, I'll give you my tooth for him. Let's see it. Tom got out a bit of paper, carefully unrolled it. Huckleberry viewed it wistfully. The temptation was very strong. At last he said, Is it genuine? Tom lifted his lip and showed the vacancy. Well, all right, said Huckleberry. It's a trade. Tom enclosed the tick in the percussion cap box that had lately been the pinch bug's prison, and the boys separated, each feeling wealthier than before. When Tom reached the little isolated frame schoolhouse, he strode in briskly with the manner of one who'd come with all honest speed. He hung his hat on a peg, flung himself in a seat with businesslike alacrity. The master, throned on high in his great splint-bottom armchair, was dozing, lulled by the drowsy hum of study. The interruption aroused him. "Thomas Sawyer?" Tom knew that when his name was pronounced in full, it meant trouble. "Sir?" "Come up here. Now, sir, why are you late again, as usual?" Tom was about to take refuge in a lie when he saw two long tails of yellow hair hanging down a back that he recognized by the electric sympathy of love, and by that form was the only vacant place on the girls' side of the schoolhouse. He instantly said, "I stopped to talk to Huckleberry Finn." The master's pulse stood still. He stared helplessly. The buzz of study ceased. The pupils wondered if this foolhardy boy had lost his mind. The master said, "You did what?" "I stopped to talk to Huckleberry Finn." There was no mistaking the words. "Thomas Sawyer, this is the most astounding confession I have ever listened to. No mere ferule who will answer for this offense. Take off your jacket." The master's hand performed until it was tired, and the stock of switches notably diminished. Then the order followed. "Now, sir, go and sit with the girls, and let this be a warning to you." The titter that rippled around the room appeared to abash the boy, but in reality, that result was caused rather more by his worshipful awe of his unknown idol and the dread pleasure that lay in his high good fortune. In other words, he's going to get to sit next to Becky Thatcher. He sat down upon the end of the pine bench, and the girl hitched herself away from him with a toss of her head. Nudges and winks and whispers traversed the room, but Tom sat still, with his arms upon the long, low desk before him, and seemed to study his book. By and by, attention ceased from him, and the accustomed school murmur rose upon the dull air once more. Presently, the boy began to steal furtive glances at the girl. She observed it, made a mouth at him, and gave him the back of her head for the space of a minute. When she cautiously faced around again, a peach lay before her. She thrust it away. Tom gently pushed it back. She thrust it away again, but with less animosity. Tom patiently returned it to his place, and then she let it remain. Tom scrawled on his slate, "Please take it, I got more." The girl glanced at the words but made no sign. Now, the boy, Tom, began to draw something on the slate, hiding his work with his left hand. For a time, the girl refused to notice, but her human curiosity presently began to manifest itself by hardly perceptible signs. The boy worked on, apparently unconscious. The girl made a sort of non-committal attempt to see, but the boy did not betray that he was aware of it, and at last she gave in and hesitantly whispered, "Let me see it." Tom partly uncovered a dismal caricature of a house with two gable ends to it and a corkscrew of smoke issuing from the chimney. Then the girl's interest began to fasten itself upon the work, and she forgot everything else. When it was finished, she gazed a moment, then whispered, "It's nice. Make a man." The artist erected a man in the front yard that resembled a derrick. He could have stepped over the house, but the girl was not hypercritical. She was satisfied with the monster and whispered, "It's a beautiful man. Now, make me coming along." Tom drew an hourglass with a full moon and straw limbs to it and armed the spreading fingers with a portentous fan. The girl said, "It's ever so nice. I wish I could draw." "It's easy," whispered Tom. "I'll learn you." "Oh, will you? When?" "At noon. Do you go home to dinner?" "I'll stay if you will." "Good. There's a whack. What's your name?" "Becky Thatcher." "What's yours?" "Oh, I know. It's Thomas Sawyer." That's the name they lick me by. I'm Tom when I'm good. You call me Tom, will you? Yes. Now Tom began to scrawl something on the slate, hiding the words from the girl, but she was not backward this time. She begged to see. Tom said, "Oh, it ain't nothing." "Yes, it is." "No, it ain't. You don't want to see it." "Yes, I do. Indeed, I do. Please let me." "You'll tell." "No, I won't. Deed and double deed, I won't." "You won't tell anybody at all, ever as long as you live?" "No, I won't tell anybody. Now let me see." "Oh, you don't want to see." "Now that you treat me so, I will see." And she put her small hand upon his, and a little scuffle ensued. Tom pretending to resist in earnest, but letting his hand slip by degrees till these words were revealed: "I love you." "Oh, you bad thing!" And she hid his hand, a smart rap, but reddened, looked pleased nevertheless. Just at this juncture, the boy felt a slow, fateful grip closing on his ear and a steady, lifting impulse. In that vice, he was borne across the house and deposited in his own seat, under a peppering fire of giggles from the whole school. Then the master stood over him during a few awful moments and finally moved away to his throne without saying a word. But although Tom's ear tingled, his heart was jubilant. As the school quieted down, Tom made an honest effort to study, but the turmoil within him was too great. In turn, he took his place in the reading class and made a botch of it. Then in the geography class, and turned lakes into mountains and mountains into rivers and rivers into continents, till chaos was come again. Then in the spelling class, and got turned down by a succession of mere baby words, till he brought up at the foot and yielded up the pewter medal which he had worn with the ostentation for months. So he's got his mind on other things. What do you think he's thinking about as to why he is performing so poorly in school today? Do you think it's the cat and midnight, or do you think it's Becky Thatcher? Well, we'll know in the next chapter. The next chapter is called Early Lessons. So see you later. Bye-bye.